Hello again. Long time no see, guys. Welcome back to the Ostrichtechnique, the only podcast where you can stick your head in the sand for a little bit and enjoy a bit of a break as you are working through some stuff and prepping your new set of podcasts. I'm one of your hosts, Ananth.
And I'm your other host, Chris.
Chris, it's been a while. How have you been doing, man? I mean, I know you and I have obviously been talking outside of the pod, but it's been a while since we've done one of these.
Yeah, I think, both of us have been busy, which is why we've had a little break, but it's good to finally be back and talking about some Marvel movies with you.
Yeah, and not just any Marvel movies. We're coming back here to you today, and we're talking about Ant-Man after our second Avengers movie. Chris, how are you feeling about Ant-Man here?
I really like this movie. It was a nice little fun movie,
Yeah.
and I think it definitely exceeded a lot of people's expectations, given that the
hmm
character isn't necessarily, very mainstream to the casual fan.
I would agree. I think this is a great little movie. It's a nice little palate cleanser, especially after Age of Ultron. I mean, this only came out like 2 months after Age of Ultron back in 2015. And it was a really nice, sort of refreshing, lower stakes, small scale, no pun intended movie versus Age of Ultron, which I really appreciated. And it's just a great time. It's a really great time. I mean, Chris, I guess before we start, I do have to ask, like, what were your impressions? Like, I guess taking your mind back to 2015, like, what were your thoughts about this movie? I guess going into it, like, what do you remember about that time?
I do think I was excited because that was still the time where Marvel was really rolling. And
Yes.
even with a character like Ant-Man, who I didn't really know too much about,
hmm
I was still excited to see what they were going to do with the character. I had seen the test footage from Edgar Wright,
Yeah.
and that looked really interesting. So to have that
hmm
sort of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, I don't know what you call it, but a situation
Energy.
or just, yeah, energy. I really was interested in seeing it, and I remember coming out of the theater thinking that was a really fun movie.
I agree. I mean, I remember there was so much talk about this movie being in development for ages. And I'm glad you mentioned Edgar Wright because I don't think you can talk about this first movie without Edgar Wright. And honestly, I mean, coming back to the original Ant-Man movie, especially after the dud that is Quantumania, this movie just feels so refreshing and confident in what it is. I think a lot of that has to do with the energy that honestly Edgar Wright infused into the script. And I'm pretty sure he's still credited as one of the screenwriters of this movie
Yes.
just because they took a lot of
Yep.
what his original script had.
hmm
And yeah, I mean, I don't think that this is a controversial take, but I would say this is probably the best of the three Ant-Man movies. This is
I think
probably
it's far and away the best one.
yeah, I would agree. Far and away the best one. And we can talk about this more maybe at the end of it, and we'll have a better explanation as to why once we've talked about like scenes in the movie that we liked. But I think a lot of that has to do with honestly Edgar Wright's sauce that he put into the script of this movie is really what drove a lot of this movie. And I mean, Edgar Wright is such a master of really blending emotion and humor and energy and style into all of his movies. I mean, I was telling you, Chris, as an aside, that I saw, or I don't know if I did tell you, that I saw Scott Pilgrim for the first time pretty recently, actually. And it's such a shot of energy in your arm watching Edgar Wright's directing style. So I think a lot of what makes that movie so good is infused in here in like sort of an MCU take. And I think it just feels so nice to see this movie after Quantumania, which is just
Yeah.
a movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, we can talk more in the specifics, I think, at the end, why I think it works. But I guess we can just dive right into it, Chris. Why don't you give us the sort of breakdown?
Sure. So this is 2015's Ant-Man. It is directed by Peyton Reed, and the synopsis for this movie is armed with a super suit with astonishing ability to shrink in scale but increase in strength, cat burglar Scott Lang must embrace his inner hero and help his mentor, Dr. Hank Pym, pull off a plan that will save the world. Now, this stars Paul Rudd, Michael Douglas, Corey Stoll, and Evangeline Lilly.
Yeah. A couple of people who didn't mention, though, well, one of the, I think, most important ones is also Michael Pena, key cast member, I think, which
Very key.
I'm sure we will discuss in detail throughout this
Yes.
movie. But yeah, we'll just jump right into Act 1 here, Chris. What are some scenes or things that stood out to you in Act 1?
I mean, if we're going to start, talking about Michael Pena, I would start right here. I think from the get-go, him picking up Scott from the prison and just getting to see his character, Luis, is just really fun.
Yeah.
And I'd say Luis is sort of like the hidden gem of this movie. Just his positive energy, but also just just every scene that he's in, it's really got me really excited, and had me laughing. So that first scene where he's picking up Scott and the van, and Scott's asking Luis how he's doing, and Luis basically just says update after update, just gets worse and worse, and then he's like, "But I got the van." So I like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think Luis is absolutely the comedic heart of this movie. I mean, everyone has their comedic moments for sure. I mean, Paul Rudd is funny. Scott is funny. Hope has a moment of being funny. But Luis is really the comedic driver of the movie. And honestly, to me, is like the clearest influence of Edgar Wright's comedic style. And I think a lot of that has to do with that sequence that he has where he's like spinning the story of how he finds out about Hank Pym's house, where he's like, I met this guy who knew this guy, and like he's saying it in his style. It's so funny, and clearly one of the most like iconic bits of maybe the MCU overall is just that sort of like running gag, which they only kept. Well, they used it in this movie, and they used it a little bit in the second movie, and then of course, for some inexplicable reason, Luis isn't even in Quantumania. One of the many reasons why that movie is terrible.
Yeah.
I feel like this podcast is just going to be me just ragging on Quantumania half this time. But I think rightfully so, because this movie is so good. We know what Ant-Man as a character in a movie is capable of, and they got it so right from the beginning. So yeah, anyway. But Luis is definitely a shining beacon within this movie, of which there are many. But definitely, I completely agree with you. I think one thing which I liked in this movie upon reflection is just how I think intelligently they weave in a lot of storytelling and almost exposition in the beginning of the movie. You get a lot of information thrown at you, but it's not done in like the standard expo dump way in like it is in a lot of movies. I think until you get to like the second act when Hank starts telling you about like the backstory of like these are the Pym particles, this is the Ant-Man, and talking about his like what happens with Janet when in the later acts. I think the way that they explain a lot of it in the beginning of the movie actually is like pretty seamless. Like we get the sense that there's tension in the past. Like I mean, the opening shot is literally the Triskelion being built. So for anyone that's in the know, like you already know we're dealing with Shield. This is in the past, and we get, I mean, a bunch of key Shield figures. We get Howard Stark, we get Peggy Carter. So like you get the sense of their relationship, you get the hostility that Hank has against them. You get a little bit of an inkling that something has happened to Janet from the conversation and how much he cares about that. And yeah, I mean, I think they do that a couple of times throughout this movie, and they do it well. I think even going through Scott's backstory, talking about the Vista Core job and how that like it works within the narrative of the story without making you feel like you're getting exposition dumped on you. And I think that really worked well for me throughout.
I agree. And you mentioned that flashback as the opening scene. I think that Michael Douglas de-aging was phenomenal.
Oh, it looked really good for 2015. Yeah.
And I mean, I still think it held up pretty well, you know, now we're like almost a decade later. I think just overall, I think the CGI in this movie was done pretty well. And especially when you compare it to like Quantumania and just, you
Ha!
know,
You're joining in now too.
I am, yeah. But just compared to like, Marvel Phase 3, like I think the CGI was overall pretty decent. Like I didn't have really too many, qualms with it, especially with, the ant size level
Yeah.
scenes. Like I thought those were like really, really cool. And
Hmm.
that was also another, favorite part of mine from the first act of when Scott uses the shrinking tech for the first time.
Oh yeah, that whole sequence is really well done.
Hmm.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think part of the reason why this movie works well is it allows Ant-Man to be an a man the size of an ant. It doesn't deal with all of this quantum realm mumbo jumbo, which I get why they had to because it set up a lot of like phase 3 and, you know, the time travel stuff and Endgame and blah blah blah. But I think this movie, the reason it works so well is it allows Ant Man to be an Ant Man. It doesn't make him be like quantum
Right.
whatever man or whatever. And honestly, even the better parts of Ant Man and the Wasp, like some of those action sequences, is when they're actually ant sized and not like in the quantum realm stuff,
Hmm.
doing all of that stuff. So yeah, I completely agree. I think that whole sequence and all of the CG around him shrinking is really well done. And I know one of the parts that stood out for me is in that sequence when they turn on the water in
Yeah.
the bathtub. That looks so good.
Yeah.
It looked like it was basically shot with like macro photography. And I know they did a lot of research for that and they did a really good job with it. So
Mm.
fully agree with you there. I think another part that I liked is I'm talking, I guess, more in like the theoretical parts of the movie. Not theoretical, but like the more sort of not the concrete, I guess. So the point being is I think I really also liked the character development for Scott. Like I think you could see the desperation that he had to try and do the right thing. And I think the way they spin his story, they show his story and they show him as a person, you can tell he's a good person trying to just like get by. And even the Vistacor job, they basically explained that he saw something wrong and tried to do the right thing, maybe in the wrong way, but like he always had good intentions. And I think I think very effectively paint him as a and sympathetic character with clear motivations. Like you get right away his motivations about Cassie, you get his motivations about wanting to do the right thing. And I think it's the character development that I feel that we're missing from MCU movies nowadays, where like I think the reason that all Marvel fans are so invested in like the phase 1 through 3 heroes is because we got character based stories about them and we really invested in who they are as people. And we've completely, I think, lost the plot about that in these phase 4 movies and a lot of them. I mean, exceptions here and there, but yeah, I think Scott is just really well developed overall.
I agree. And there's also something to say where, you have a father-daughter story going on too. Like that's a very easy conduit to develop a character. And I
Oh
think it was
yeah.
done really well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that whole relationship is also, I mean, the way that they demonstrate how fraught it is. I think it there's a lot of rich ground there to explore, and I mean, I think they do explore it in a good manner, and it sort of leads into a point which I have in Act 3, which I'll get to, but or Act 2, end of Act 2, but it is really, really well done. I mean, I think those three characters in particular, Hope, Hank, and Scott, are all really, really well developed. I will say, I mean, I think you would agree. The sort of flip side of that is that people that aren't well developed, I think there's one that really stands out to me, and it's Darren Cross. And
Yeah,
I think you
I
would
was
agree
about to
with
say
that.
that. Yep, I was
Yeah.
about to say that.
Yeah. So, I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think Darren, aka Yellow Jacket, was very well developed. It just seemed like a very generic sort of villain where, hey, my mentor kind of like passed up on me, and
Yeah.
so now I'm gonna make him pay for it, and I'm going to be the smarter one, and gloat in his face, and be evil. That's sort of generic. Like, I mean, like we look at Star Wars, for instance, right? Anakin passed up on promotion, and that partially leads to his turn to the dark side. But I think that was done much better than the way that this has been done with Darren Cross.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Darren Cross was just not well developed whatsoever. So it is just a bit of a shame that we didn't get that. But again, I think the whole point of it is, I mean, it's kind of like a lot of the villains. It's basically the reverse of the good guy, kind of like how we had Iron Man, Ironmonger.
Red
I
Skull,
mean,
Cap,
Red Skull, Cap, and I mean,
Abomination, Hulk. Like, yeah, they're all
yeah, it's like basically the reverse version of them. So a time tested comic book trope in terms of villains, but Yellow Jacket, I mean, Yellow Jacket isn't even, I mean, I think in the comics it's just a variation of Hank
Hank
Pym,
Pym. Yeah, and
right?
then they kind of reworked it.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, this is, it kind of falls into the same thing, like, the sort of wayward son that Scott ends up basically taking the mantle of for Hank by, his goodness and pureness of heart versus, Darren Cross being much more selfishly motivated and always wanting some sort of respect or, fame for himself or something, or I guess money, whatever. But yeah, definitely not super well developed in my mind. I think we both agree there.
Hmm.
But I'm trying to think, I will say, I'm also going to go back to the point that you made on the CG kind of, where we were talking about like that whole sequence where Scott suits up for the first time. I don't know about you, but I do really like the look of this first suit in particular. I do like that it's one, I could like, I was paying closer attention this time also in terms of like the suit and stuff, but like you could see that it was like battle worn from like when Hank actually wore it. Like there was like a scratch over his mask, which had me feeling like, and it looked like I don't know if you noticed this, but it looked like a cat scratch almost. And I don't know, my headcanon makes me think that he had a sort of tussle with the Black Panther, but that's just my headcanon.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
agree. I do. I honestly I do like this suit the most out of the Ant-Man trilogy, and I guess just any of the Ant-Man appearances in the MCU. Because after this,
mm,
they do switch up the helmet. I do like this helmet the most.
yeah,
I do like the suit overall the most. I will say I wish it was a little bit more comic accurate, but
hmm,
we do get a glimpse of the comic accurate helmet in Endgame, although it's not worn. But
yeah,
the suit itself, I wish was a little bit more comic accurate. But overall, I liked it. Pretty satisfied.
yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I think I would say even the suit in Civil War was pretty good too. But yeah, I agree. I think there's a charm to this first suit that the other ones don't really replicate. And I mean, I don't think this is an uncommon complaint that like the nanoparticles, I
Oh,
think
oh
criticism that like all
yeah,
suits have like nanoparticles and like the helmets just sort of like neatly go away and then come back on. Yeah, I like that this one was tactile. I mean, even with the Iron Man helmets, I think that they were better when they were tactile
I
too.
agree.
So
Yeah,
yeah, just much better. And I do like that the sort of vintage 70s look. Though I think Paul Rudd hated this suit because it was like really tight leather and like he couldn't, I think, lift his arms above his shoulders or something.
mhm,
So, I mean, I totally get it, but hey, I don't think they make these suits to to feel good. I think they make them just to look good, for the movies. So,
yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I think that is a good, you know, coverage of Act One. Is there anything else that you want to talk about in Act One?
No, I think we pulled out some pretty good points.
Yeah. All right then. So I guess now we will do our customary transition here between acts 1 and 2. We're going to do trivia now. We're not going to do Stanley's cameo because that his Stanley's cameo, if you're in the know, is all the way at the end of this movie. So we will do that as our next transition. But obviously, for our last episode for the Avengers, we kind of both did it, but based on the count of movies, I believe that I am due for trivia now, Chris. Right?
You are. So I have a few questions for you, and
Oh boy. Okay, I'm ready.
all right. So question 1: what mythical creature was the working title of this film named after?
Mythical creature? Oh, wow. I have no idea. Can I get a hint? Or like
Sure.
yeah, I'll take a hint first before I ask for multiple choice.
Sure. So the name, I guess, kind of ironically relates to the name, not the name, but ironically relates to this film,
It ironically relates to this film.
or I guess the main character of the film, or the title of the film, whatever you want to call it.
A mythical creature that relates to ants? That's okay. I have absolutely no clue, so I'm just going to ask for the multiple choice here.
Oh, so how about we go half point if you
Sure.
get it? All right. So the first one is Loch Ness.
Mm-hmm.
Option 2 is werewolf.
Okay.
3 is centaur,
Uh-huh.
and 4 is Bigfoot.
Loch Ness, centaur, Bigfoot, and werewolf. I don't see how any of these are ironically related to Ant-Man. I'm going to take a wild guess and say Loch Ness.
It is not. It is Bigfoot.
How
I
was it
was
Bigfoot?
I was going for, well, ant is tiny and Bigfoot. But anyway,
Okay. All right. Well, fine. Sure.
I mean,
Okay.
that's the only, all these working titles somehow relate to the film, right?
Yeah,
Usually. So that's what I'm guessing they were going for, because there's no sort of like Canada or forest reference in this movie at all.
I guess so. Sure. Okay. Bigfoot. Sure. I mean, I think this one was a little bit more obscure versus like I don't know if you saw the production name for the new Vision series that's coming out. It's called Tin Man. So
Oh, I did not.
yeah,
Well, at least I didn't give you a math question about, data recorded tapes and how long it is. Anyway,
yeah,
question
yep.
2.
All right, I'm ready for question 2. Hopefully that one goes better.
Yes. Question 2, related to our favorite ice cream, fast food, however you want to call it, place that always finds out. So Scott
Yes.
briefly works at
Yeah.
Baskin Robbins.
Baskin Robbins.
Baskin Robbins always finds out.
Yes.
One of my favorite lines of probably the
Mm-hmm.
entire phase. But anyway,
Oh, that's true. Yeah, it's a great line. Yeah.
Scott briefly works at Baskin Robbins after he is released from prison. Which restaurant
Mm-hmm.
chain rejected their company's inclusion in the film as Scott's employer? So,
Which
a,
restaurant chain?
a restaurant chain rejected their company's inclusion, so they ended up settling on Baskin Robbins.
I feel like that I remember this being like Olive Garden. Was it Olive Garden?
It is not. It is a different cuisine. It is Mexican cuisine. It is
Taco Bell?
Chipotle.
Really?
Yeah, apparently they were not super happy about a negative portrayal of their company in the
Oh,
film.
because they don't hire cons. Okay. All right.
So they passed, and ultimately the film settled on Baskin Robbins.
Yeah, that's okay. I guess Baskin Robbins didn't care, but Chipotle did for some reason. Okay.
Yes.
All right. I mean, I don't know. I don't see Baskin Robbins in a negative light because of this
Me
movie.
neither.
So I
I
don't
find
know.
it pretty funny.
Chipotle. Yeah, I find it funny. Exactly. So I think Chipotle sort of dropped the ball there.
Yeah. All right. Question 3.
This is not going well for
I
me, Chris.
I think you'll get this one,
Okay,
and
I hope so.
I think you probably also knew this one going into this. But if you didn't, I think watching the film you noticed it. So, Yellow Jackets
Okay.
laser sounds are pulled from another popular franchise. What fictional vehicle are the laser sounds originally from?
Fictional vehicle? Oh my god.
From a
Are these
popular
the, are
franchise.
I know that this is from Star Wars. I know these are sounds are from Star Wars. They use Skywalker sound things all the time. I'm just trying to think what vehicle they use this from. Oh god, I knew this too. That's the real sad bit.
Yeah.
I'm going to say TIE Fighter from Star
Oh,
Wars.
so close. It is an Empire vehicle, but it is not a TIE fighter.
Is it
It
the
is
AT-AT?
it is the AT-AT.
God damn it. I knew it was the AT-AT too. Oh, that was my second guess. I initially was thinking of the AT-AT and then I went for TIE Fighter. Man, that's so
Should have
sad.
trusted the gut.
I should have. This is going very poorly for me.
Yeah. Unfortunately for you, but
All
fortunately
right.
for me. This one is a little bit
Yeah.
more difficult, but we will see if you get it.
Oh,
The
lovely. Lovely. Okay.
the cab driver whose cab Scott lands on after trying the Ant-Man suit on for the first time is a cameo
Hmm.
by Garrett Morris.
Okay.
What is his real world tie to the character of Ant-Man?
Garrett Morris? Bro, what? Garrett Morris's relation to the Ant-Man movie or the
Well,
character?
character.
Oh my god. I have I don't Oh, is it related to like the comic book writers? Like it's a probably a combination of the writers' names that wrote the original Ant-Man or something?
The so the cab driver's real life name is Garrett Morris.
The which
So
character's real name?
so the cab driver's real name is Garrett Morris. His character's name, I don't think they have
Yes.
named him.
Oh, the cab driver, the actor's real name is Garrett Morris.
Correct.
Okay, so it can't be then, you know. Got it. Okay, I see. Yeah, I have. God, this is just
Brutal.
really bad. I have no clue what his relation is to the Ant-Man character whatsoever. Can I get a hint on this one also?
Let me think. This is difficult. Garrett Morris is an actor and was previously on, I would say, arguably one of the most famous comedy sketch shows ever.
Okay, so he's on a comedy sketch show, famous comedy sketch shows ever. That probably means SNL. Yeah, I don't know. Was it probably that he like played Ant-Man on SNL or something?
That is correct. We'll give you a half a point, but that is correct. So, back in season 4 of SNL, he portrayed Ant-Man in Ant-Man's first live action
Ooh,
appearance in a sketch or in a skit.
wow.
So
Okay.
somehow
Well,
that
I
was the
got
first one you got
one
a
or
point.
I got a half a point.
Yeah.
I don't I mean yeah, I mean your hint was quite generous, so I think the half point is fair.
And then we
Yeah.
will get to this final question, and I hope you know movies.
Okay.
So Judy Greer portrays Maggie Lang in this movie.
Yes.
She also portrays War Pig in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 starring Chris Pratt. What
Mhm.
other Chris Pratt film does Judy Greer appear in?
What other Chris Pratt film? Bro, I don't know Chris Pratt films. I only know
Well,
that
sorry.
he's in Jurassic.
Yeah, Chris. Like,
Sorry, yeah, go
films
ahead.
that Chris Pratt has started.
Films that Chris Pratt has started. That doesn't help me because I know that I only know so many movies that he's been in. I only know that he's been in like what the Jurassic World movies. He's been in the Tomorrow War. I don't know what other movies that Chris Pratt has been in. Like he
Wow.
was mostly a TV guy, as far as I know.
Well, this should make your options, slimmer and easier to pick from. But you were also missing one major movie. But anyway,
One major movie
I'm
that
not
Chris Pratt
saying.
was
Yeah, I'm not
the
saying that's
Lego
the movie
movie.
or not.
I mean, like, there's also animated movies. I mean, like the Lego movie, the Mario Brothers movie, the Garfield movie.
Yeah, those movies
Um,
count.
those movies count, but I don't think Judy Greer was a character in any of them. Yeah, I, I mean, I have no idea what movie that they were in together. Jeez, can I get this one multiple choice too? This is just a horrendous trivia round for me, but I'll just take it with multiple choice.
All right. All right. Option 1 is the Lego movie, which, you were kind of missing at the beginning, but you got there.
Okay.
Number 2, Super Mario. Number
Mm-hmm.
3, Jurassic World. And number 4, Moneyball.
Okay. Okay. Moneyball. Oh my god, I completely forgot about him being in Moneyball. Wow. Well, I haven't seen Moneyball, so that doesn't help my case here. Okay. I think from your choices, I think it's Jurassic World. That's just my guess.
It is Jurassic World. I will give
Oh,
you another half
oh,
point.
oh man. I think this might be the worst performance on any of our trivia games ever. If I just got one whole point.
Hey, I'll give you a bonus option for another half point. If you can name which character from The Office is she married to in Jurassic World?
She's married to another character from Parks and Rec.
No, The Office. The
Oh,
Office.
from The Office
Yeah, like
in Jurassic.
her character is married to somebody who portrays a character in The Office.
Oh my god. Well, is this doesn't help that I haven't seen Jurassic World. So
Wait, you
I'm
haven't seen it yet?
no, I've not seen Jurassic World.
Ah,
I mean, yeah, I mean, I think my interest in the Jurassic franchise ended with the first movie, which is I think undoubtedly the best one.
I mean, it's one of the greatest films of all time.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, man, I bro, who from the who's even from The Office that I can think of off the top of my head in the Jurassic movies?
You're just gonna take a shot in the dark.
I mean, I will have to take a shot in the dark. Well, I mean, it has to be a man, which I mean, I know Steve Carell is not in it. I know that Ed Helms is not in it. I don't think that she's going to be married to Stanley or Oscar or I mean, what's the one in the back, the big dude played by Brian Baumgartner,
Kevin?
Kevin. It's not going to be them. Not going to be Creed. It's definitely not going to be John Krasinski or actually Rainn Wilson. I could see. It's not going to be Toby. Definitely not Ryan. Actually, I mean, it could be Toby also. There's also the boss from Dunder Mifflin. I'm forgetting his name too, but that guy I think is also very possible. God, I don't. David Wallace, that's his name. David Wallace. I just got it. I'm gonna guess David Wallace. That's my guess. David Wallace.
It is Andy Buckley, aka David Wallace.
Oh my God. Wow. Okay. Well, thank you, process of elimination and blind guessing.
Yes.
Fine.
So to
1.5
end,
points.
yes.
Still the worst showing on a trivia thing, but okay.
I would say so. So to total our phase 2 scores, you have a total of 12, and I ended with a total of 15.
Well, okay. That's acceptable. Well played. I think you made this one intentionally hard just to get your to goose your score here, but fair play.
Hey, when you throw out, math questions at me, I'm gonna have to come back hard, at some
Hey,
point.
that was only one question that the
Well,
size of the
the
storage units in Cap Winter Soldier, so
damage was done.
okay. Well, I will say,
Anyway,
I mean, this is war now. Now for Civil War,
okay,
I'm coming back swinging. So,
okay, I'll see you there.
all right. Okay. Okay. I guess it fits the theme of that movie too. But all right.
Yes. All right. So phase
Act
2.
2.
Act 2.
Act 2 in the last phase 2 movie. Yes. So Act 2, Chris. Let's get into it. What are maybe some scenes that stand out to you in Act 2?
The fight with Falcon at the
Oh
Avengers
yeah.
headquarters.
Yes. Great choice. Great
I
choice.
think that was a surprise to me that Falcon appeared. I don't think I knew going into it when I first saw that Falcon was going to appear. So it was a nice surprise to have an Avengers cameo, and I think it was a really fun fight. And of course, it starts that relationship between Falcon and Ant-Man, which we then see carry through into Civil War.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's such a great interaction between them. I mean, I think this part of the movie also really speaks to the humor and editing that this movie has is just so sharp. Like the fact that Hank just thought this was some random old Stark facility and it ends up being Avengers campus was such a fun reveal. And I know when Scott screams, "You son of a bitch," I remember the theater just like cracked up when they saw that. Just it was such a well done thing. And then of course when he gets revealed or discovered by the Falcon, he opens his mask and goes, "Hi, I'm Scott," which is so stupid but so funny. And even Hope just acknowledges just how dumb that was.
Yeah.
The way that that's edited is just so pitch perfect. It's just so funny. Yeah, and then even at the end, when Falcon loses, he says, "It's really important to me that Cap never finds out about this." It's all so good. It's really, really well done. Comedy, action. The fight makes sense. The cameo makes sense. That this isn't like, an A-list Avenger fighting right now against the Ant-Man. Like this is not something that they would want to bother Cap or Iron Man with. Also, I mean, from practical terms, they're probably not going to get RDJ or Chris Evans to pop up in this movie, but it was still great. And I completely agree. Great scene.
Yeah.
I'm glad you called it out because I would have if you hadn't.
I mean, it's a great scene. It sets up a lot of things.
Yeah.
And like even in Civil War, it's going to set up Ant-Man going into Tony's suit and unplugging things and making it break down like he did to Falcon's jetpack. So
yeah. No, exactly.
Payoff.
Yeah. So I guess in that sort of vein, I think the other part that I really liked in this movie or in this part of the film, I guess, is I think that I guess the whole point about Falcon sort of lends to this point is the connections that this movie makes to the broader MCU while still feeling very self-contained. I think it does it in a really smart way in multiple ways. Like I think like the beginning, the Act 1 opening, basically the opening of the movie with the Triskelion and Howard Stark and Peggy Carter, like all of that is like really nice, like sort of connective tissue that doesn't feel like ham-fisted or forced into the movie. The fact that they're breaking into Avengers campus, which used to be an old Stark storage facility, also feels like very natural and like fits in the context of the movie. Also, the joke where when Scott gets the whole thing explained to him that this is like, world ending and like this is a really serious thing. And he's like, I think our first move should be to call the Avengers. And then, Hank is like, yeah, they're too busy, dropping building or whatever cities out of the sky, which is also a nice little sort of time stamp for us because it tells us immediately that this takes place after Age of Ultron too.
Yeah.
So, and I think that all of these like little connective tissue bits all work really well to place Ant-Man within the MCU without making us feel like this is like totally it's separated. And I think that's it speaks to the difference that, say, like right now in like phase 4 and 5 that we've been sort of lacking, where people feel like these movies are like totally like separated from the prime MCU timeline. So like things that like even like in Shang-Chi, for example, like that one felt particularly standalone, I think, until the post-credit scene where we see him interacting with Wong. Or even like some of the other ones like the Eternals. I mean, that movie spans obviously a long period of time, but that one felt super disconnected, and we didn't see anything about Tiamat obviously now till Brave New World, for example. So I think that the way that they did sort of the connections to the broader MCU, I think it actually works the best in this movie as like a sort of tie-in to the broader MCU than it did maybe in any other sort of standalone movie, arguably.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I guess another bit that stood out to you, Chris, in this act?
I maybe like the training montage with Scott.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we get to see more ant-size action. And this is where, you're referring to earlier on. We get some more exposition about, hey, like, here's the science behind the suit. And I think the exposition makes sense because, one, the casual viewer is not going to really understand what, like, the intricacies of, like, what the Pym particles actually do and, like, what these different ant specialties are.
Yeah.
But it makes sense because Scott himself is like the audience has no idea about this. So Hank explaining it to Scott also, is essentially just a vehicle to explain to the audience. And I think that was a very natural way to do it. And I also, like I said, I really like the ant size action and just seeing all the different ants and their different abilities. And, also seeing that, hey, Hope is a pretty capable fighter herself.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think all of that, the training montage is well set up. I mean, this movie has like this movie is like sort of centered around this sort of central heist of them trying to take away or steal the yellow jacket suit. So I think to that end, they set up the pieces quite well, where we get a really good introduction to the character, we get an introduction to the villain and like why it matters what they're stealing, and then we get all of the little bits and pieces set up. And we also get a demonstration of Scott's skills multiple times, like when he tries to break in and steal the suit the first time, and then when he is able to sneakily steal the little piece of tech, the Stark Tech thing, or Hank Pym's tech from the Avengers campus. So I think it works on multiple levels, really. So well played there overall. Yeah. So I think that all works. And then I think going back to what I was saying in Act 1, I think another bit that I really liked is, again, the character development. And I specifically want to talk about the character development for Hope and Hank, because I think that scene where they explain what happens to Janet in particular, I think the acting in that scene is actually really well done. I think that you can feel Hope's sort of just like frustration and sort of all of her emotion coming out. And in that moment, I mean, even Hank, he's just like, he's finally accepted that he has to tell Hope this because of her outburst earlier. And also, I think his realization of like, being with Scott and stuff like that. So I think that works really, really well. But it's also tied to both Hank's motivation about why the Pym particle is important to him. And sort of earlier in the scene, we also get Scott's motivation very clearly demonstrated and explained. The fact that Cassie is his sort of motivating factor, why he's doing all of this. So
yeah,
I think that works really, really well. And again, speaks to how we are invested in these characters and invested in the story because they did a good job building the characters up.
Yeah, I agree with all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I think to that point, the line that I really liked from that bit is when Scott says, "I'm expendable, and that's why I'm here," versus, and then the whole line of "He'd rather lose this fight than lose you." I think that those two really sort of encapsulate that scene really well, and maybe some of the best lines in the movie, personally.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I guess any other scenes that stand out to you in Act 2?
Not really. I mean, I think most of it is really those two. Like, really, most of Act 2 is seeing Scott train and really become Ant-Man, and then his first quote-unquote mission. And, we have, Darren Cross perfecting his, like, particle formula.
Yeah.
But even that didn't really even stand out to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly anything that Darren does. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, I guess the scene where Darren appears in Hank's home, you can really feel that tension. And I think it's probably one of the, like, scarier, moments from Darren where...
Yeah, I would agree.
You're not sure, like, what did he overhear Hank talking to Hope? Does he know that Scott is in the house? Does he even know who Scott is? Is he aware of, their plan to do a heist? But yeah, I mean, really, like you said, anything that involves Darren really didn't stand out to me, besides maybe like the final fight, which we'll get into when we talk about Act 3.
Yeah. And I think that's a perfect segue before moving into Act 3. But it's, I think, a good point for us to transition here, because I don't have much more to add either. I think I agree with you. The Avengers break-in and then the training montage are really the two key points. I'll just add at the end, I think the recruitment of Luis and the other two guys was also great. Like the three wombats, as Hank calls them. I think they're just great. And then, of course, Luis basically saying, it's not often that we get invited to a home that we literally just robbed.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's just great. Luis is such a good character, man. But yeah, that is, I think, Act 2. So we are going to move into Act 3. And I think one of the things that we have been promising to you, our listeners, is that we are going to do now a Stan Lee tier list. And we're going to do this tier list in a manner that is now going to be publicly available. So this is on tiermaker.com. We have made our own personal Stan Lee MCU Cameo ranking tier list, and we will share the public link in the show notes description so that anyone can partake. And this way, if you want to share your opinions about your Stan Lee rankings with us, you can feel free to do so. And we, of course, will share ours in a public manner so that it is easier to track from episode to episode. And I think that should make things much simpler. But because this is the end of a phase, I think it would be a fun exercise to go back and re-rank our old Stan Lee cameos as now a collective Ostrichtechnique podcast and put them on our ranking here. So standard, I think, tier list, we have an S tier, which is the best, then A, B, C, and then the worst is an F tier. So we're going to do all of the movies now up till Ant-Man. So that's 12 movies. Chris, I'm going to give you the first throw here for Iron Man. Where would you place the Iron Man Stan Lee cameo? Or I guess before Iron Man, let's start with Ant-Man, because this is at the end of the movie where Stan Lee pops up and he says, in one of Luis's story montages, and he goes, he's a bartender and says, yeah, crazy, stupid, fine. So Chris, where would you put the Ant-Man cameo?
I put that in S tier.
S tier. I
Yeah,
agree.
I really liked it. It was a fun little, like you said, Luis's little cutaway lip sync moments. It
Yeah.
was fun. It kind of just like encapsulated kind of what the movie was like, the essence of the
Hmm.
movie. And, you know, for those two factors, I think I have to put it in the S tier.
I agree. I think that this is an S tier ranking. Or an S tier cameo. It's fantastic. Okay.
Say that again?
Ant-Man is there. That I think was the least contentious, easy one that we've done so far. But Chris, do you have a preference? Do you want to go backwards? Do you want to go from Age of Ultron back to Iron Man, or do you want to start from Iron Man and work our way back up?
We can go backwards, I guess.
Okay. So we'll do Age of Ultron then. So this is the one where he is a World War II veteran at the party, and Thor's talking about, the alcohol, and he's like, "Oh yeah, that you're talking about this. Omaha Beach was much worse. Let's, try some." And then he gets completely plastered. So where would you put this one, Chris?
I would put it in the A tier.
I would agree with that one. Yeah. I think I think the general rule is just ones where we get more of Stan Lee's personality, or like the character's personality, I think are just generally better cameos. But
Yes.
yeah. All right. Next one, Guardians of the Galaxy, where Rocket spies him on Xandar, old man talking to a young woman. Where would you put this one?
I put it as a C tier cameo.
I would agree with that. Yeah,
Oh,
100%
okay.
agree. Yeah. This has actually been surprisingly not contentious, but I
Yep.
think I agree with all of those takes. It's just you don't get a sense of his personality in this one. So,
Yep.
yeah. All right, next one. Captain America Civil War, or Winter Soldier, sorry, not Civil War.
You might disagree with me on this one. I put it in the B tier.
Okay. That is maybe our first point of disagreement. I would actually have put this in the A
Oh,
tier. What?
actually, hold on.
Yeah.
Sorry. I was thinking about First Avenger. My bad. I put
Yeah.
I put Winter Soldier in the S tier.
You put the Winter Soldier one in the S tier, the one where he says, "I'm so getting
I'm getting
fired for
fired.
this."
Yeah. I
Yes.
thought it was funny, but
Yeah,
let's
yeah. I think it is
see.
funny. I am not going to argue with you there. I think it's funny. I will also put this one in the S tier. Again,
Okay.
one where Stan Lee shows his personality. So there we go. Stan Lee S tier for Winter Soldier. All right, next one, Thor: The Dark World. This is the one where Selvig is in the mental institution, and Stanley asks for his shoe back when Selvig is using it to explain the wormholes from the
The Convergence.
convergence. Yeah.
This is another S tier for me.
You think this one's an S tier? Okay. I think this one is actually firmly an A tier for me.
Let's hear it.
Yeah, I think for me, just that it's a short one. Like we get a very little sense of Stanley here. Like it's fun, but I think it is just sort of limited by the fact that it's in Thor: The Dark World for me personally.
Wow. I put it in the S tier. We talk about we don't really get to see too much of Stanley's personality in this one, but I think the circumstance and the situation is why I really like it a lot. Where clearly they're in this mental institution, and Selvig is kind of gone cuckoo, and
Yeah.
then Stanley's just like, "Hey, dude, just I need my shoe, please." So I found it funny, but if you feel very firmly about A tier, we'll put it in the A tier.
Yeah, I think this one is one where I feel very strongly that this one's an A tier. But yeah, okay. A tier it is for now. All right, here is Iron Man 3. So this is the one where he is serving as a judge at like an amateur beauty pageant.
I put this one in the A tier.
Really? Okay. I would have put this one in the B tier actually, cuz
Really?
like it's really short. Like he's literally just giving a score of a 10 to like a lady.
Yeah, but he seems so excited. Yeah, and
It's true.
it's like one of
He
this
is
like
very
old
excited.
man, like 10, woo.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I wish we sort of had like mid tier rankings also, but then I think this would be way too unwieldy.
I agree.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a B, but I'm also not like gonna fight for it. Like, I think if you feel like it's an A, sure, I'll put it in an A tier.
Okay.
So, Iron Man 3 A tier. All right, this one's a big one. Avengers 1.
I put it B tier, and I think you might disagree.
B tier, really?
I think you
I
might
would
put
have
it
put this
higher.
one. I was gonna put this one as an S tier, where he says superheroes in New York, give me a break at the end of like when we're getting like the little news clips of
Mm-hmm.
like what happened after the Battle of New York. So I
Let's
think that
split the
this one is
difference.
A tier. Fine. I think that that's fair. A tier. I think that that's honestly still criminal to put it in A tier. I think this one is very firmly S tier, but I think that that one's a very clear split the difference. Okay. Next one, Captain America: The First Avenger, the one that you mistook earlier. So this is the one where he is some sort of war general and he sees someone that he thought was Cap and he says, "I thought he'd be taller."
Yes. I
Yeah,
put this in the B tier.
I agree. This one's firmly a B tier.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to contest you there. Okay. Next one. This is from Thor 1. This is the one where he's in a truck trying to pull out Mjolnir stuck in the ground in New Mexico. Chris, I feel like we're going to disagree on this one, but where are you going to put this one?
C.
C tier. Oh my God. This one's an A tier for me. Yeah, so I think we'll split the difference there again. B tier?
Yes. Yep. B tier.
B tier. All right. Iron Man 2. This is the one where he plays Larry King for a hot second.
I originally put it in the B tier, but now I'm kind of feeling C.
Yeah, I was going to say C or honestly even F tier. Honest. Like, this one is like barely in it. He's literally just like flashed up for a second. So.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, but if you feel like it's not worthy of an F, I mean, like it's hard to give us any Stanley cameo an F, but
Oh, there is one I put in the F tier for sure. But I agree with you. He's in it for a split second. So if we want to put him in
yeah,
the F, I'm not going to fight that.
okay, F tier or first F tier. All right, next one, Incredible Hulk. I have a feeling I know where you're going to put this one, but I'll
F.
let you go. Yeah, I had a feeling you were going to put this on the F tier. I actually didn't hate this one. I would have put this on the C tier personally, but I'm also not like strongly advocating against it being in the F tier, so I will just stick with that. And this is, of course, the one where he drinks the soda that has been contaminated with Hulk's blood from the bottling plant in Mexico. So, all right. The one that started it all, we're back to Iron Man 1, where he plays Hugh Hefner at the party that Tony shows up to.
I put it A, and I think you might think that's a little too high.
I think that's ridiculously high. I think that this one is also like a C tier for me, and I think at best a B tier. So I think if you're saying it's an A tier and I'm saying C, I think B is comfortable for this. Yeah. All right. Okay. So that is our tier list. So I'll just read through it again for our listeners here. So S tier right now, we have Ant-Man, Captain America, Winter Soldier. A tier, we have Avengers Age of Ultron, Thor the Dark World, Iron Man 2, and the Avengers. B tier, we have Captain America the First Avenger, Thor 1, Iron Man 1. C tier, only one, which is Guardians of the Galaxy. And then F tier, we have Iron Man 2 and the Incredible Hulk. So I think that is honestly, I think we ended up landing on a pretty fair ranking overall. So I'm not upset about this, and we will share this ranking with you, our listeners, in the show notes if you'd like to see an actual visual for this. And we will also share a template link if you want to make your own and then share it with us on our email address, ostrichtechnique@gmail.com. And if we like your ranking or we think it's particularly outrageous, maybe we'll talk about it on one of our episodes. So rank away. But yeah, I think that is our tier ranking. And going forward until Endgame, which is the last Stanley cameo, we will continue to add his new cameos here. So yeah, I guess we can go into Act 3 now, Chris.
Yeah, let's bring it home.
And I mean, Act 3, I think pretty par for the course here for Marvel movies is there's not a lot to talk about. It's basically just the final fight and I guess the lead up to that final fight. So, Chris, what would you like to talk about in this final act?
I will say the lead up to this final fight, I actually liked more. Like, I think it had more substance than some of the other Marvel films up to this point.
I would agree,
Like,
actually. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
we got to see them execute their plan of sneaking Scott into the facility, into, PIM Technologies, and then Scott actually frying all the servers and placing all the charges, and, having, was it T.I.'s character and, Luis and all of them
Yeah.
fill their roles, and, we get to see Darren essentially have almost like a one-on-one with Hank and just kind of gloating of like, I perfected your particle and now I'm selling it to Hydra in your face. So
Yep.
I actually really like this build up,
Mm-hmm.
and something we haven't talked about yet, but the score, Ant-Man's theme, it just
Oh, yeah.
fits. It just, when they play it just in during any parts of, Scott just like running around and things like that, I think it's
Mm-hmm.
really fitting for his character, like the dun, 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 it just really feels like an Ant-Man sort of score, and so it
Yeah.
really comes out, during all this.
I'm actually glad you brought up the score. I completely forgot to mention it. And it's normally, I feel like, my thing where I talk about it on
Yes.
each of the podcast episodes. So I'm glad you brought it up, because I think apart from the Avengers up till this point, this is actually, I think, the first uh, Marvel character that gets his own distinct theme. This and sorry, Guardians, I would say. Guardians is the first, and now this theme for Ant-Man is like, this one actually has a theme that like sticks through the three movies of his. So they do, I think, a really good job setting up that theme. And I think full credit to Christoph Beck here, who was the composer for this movie. He did a really good job with the score. And I think it has that sort of fun vibe, but it also has that,
Little
you know,
heisty sound to it.
yeah, it has that heisty energy to it. Yeah, I completely agree. So I'm glad you brought up the score. I completely forgot to mention it. But yeah, the score is really, really good. Particularly, I mean, when you get the full proper score and the end credits, it's really good. But
Mhm.
yeah, even in the heist, it's fantastic. So yeah, that's great. I think part of everyone filling their roles, I think one of the funny bits was, when the team is trying to come and help Scott, and they're like, "We're gonna come and help you, Scott, and ain't nothing gonna stop us." And then it's all the cops, and then it's just the back it
Luis,
up.
back it up, back
Yep,
up,
just yep, no, back it up, back it up.
back up.
No, that, I mean, that one of the funniest bits in Ant-Man for sure. So good. And it's really just a shame that, again, those three characters were deprioritized, even in Ant-Man 2, but especially like the fact that they just didn't even show up in Ant-Man 3.
Mhm.
And like, I know why probably T.I.'s character didn't show up for real world reasons,
Yes.
but I think Luis, Michael Pena's character, and then David Dastmalchian's character, Kurt, I think was his name. I think it was
Kurt,
fair
yes.
game for those two guys to show up still. Just really a shame that they didn't show up in Ant-Man 3. But anyway, I think that one's really good. I think the sequence for me, which I think you would agree was maybe the highlight of Act 3, was the Thomas the Tank Engine fight.
Yes, love.
Yeah, Thomas the Tank Engine fight, which is a sequence, I think, that very clearly speaks to the Edgar Wright energy that is infused in this movie. I think this scene, and then even the scene in the facility where they're breaking in, where Scott is like fighting that security guard and runs on the gun. I mean, that scene is like directly pulled from the
Test
reel
footage.
that he showed at Comic-Con, Edgar Wright.
Mhm.
So I think more than anything, like, those two sequences are like the most clear influences of Edgar Wright's energy, like combining like that action, but also just making it. I mean, I think the Thomas the Tank Engine one in particular, the action, but also making it really funny, like just in context that it's like, it seems super like serious that he's like throwing this like giant wooden block, or what seems like a giant wooden block, and it's like this sort of tiny thing, and then the train crashes. It's so funny and really well done. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, I think maybe one of my favorite final fights against a villain ever, just because it's so funny and entertaining.
I agree. I mean, it's that, when they're ant sized, like you said, it makes it seem like these things are huge and they're really going, to I don't know, like the train, you really think, oh, it's gonna crush Yellow Jacket, and then it cuts to like the real scale, and the train just
Yes.
topples over.
Yeah.
And same thing when they are the Pym Tech guards are shooting at that little, model or diorama,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Hmm.
Scott's running through, and you see them just like, basically just shooting up a model,
Yeah.
and then it cuts to Scott where it's like he's running through a city under attack and things are blowing up. So it's the juxtaposition and like the timing of like the cuts that just make it really entertaining and fun.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. I think the way that they cut between the ant size and like real scale just adds to the tension, but it also adds to the humor of the situation. Because I think inherently the idea of a tiny man fighting you is a humorous, just sort of
Mm-hmm.
concept. But the fact that he actually is pretty formidable as a hero, again, just nicely contrasts against that. So it's just, I think, a great fight scene overall. And I think they realize the action really well in this movie, even for a pretty lackluster villain, that I would say.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I guess any other scenes that stand out to you, Chris, from this
I
third
yeah,
act?
I when they get trapped in the suitcase,
Mm-hmm.
I think I really enjoyed that because then you see the the phone, like everything jostling around in the suitcase as it's falling to the ground. So the phone, the keys, like I
Yeah.
think there might have been like mints or some sort of candy in there, and they're just kind of floating around, and then they accidentally activate Siri to play a song that's
Yeah.
really epic, and then it just kind of cuts to the outside of the suitcase, and you just hear the sound, and then you see the little lasers, you know, popping through the suitcase, and then you just see it land in a pool.
Yeah.
Again, a little, cut back and forth in between the ant size and then the real life
Mm-hmm.
scale. Just another example of that I really liked.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, again, I think the best parts of this, and then even Quantumania, are the parts where they are going between ant size and regular size. So I think that it's just really well done overall. Just really inventive and like just interesting action to watch. And it's also shot in really interesting ways. I That is actually something I think in general that I meant to talk about in Act One, but I think applies overall. Is I think the I feel like the cinematography in this movie was just kind of it's nice to see, like, not just like the most generic, like bland studio lighting. Like, again, Quantum Mania. I keep coming back to Quantum Mania, but I think it really does encapsulate everything wrong with current Marvel. But anyway, I think the lighting in this movie was also like, it has a naturalistic look to it, which I think just really it's refreshing to come back to see that in a Marvel movie where they actually allow there to be, shadows, like people to be lit in interesting manners and not just, you know, have lights all over you and be super duper evenly lit.
Because it's good for CGI and green
Yeah, I mean, it is
screen.
good for CGI, and they are filming in a studio, and it simplifies things because then you don't have to, you know, you can just have everything super evenly lit. But then the downside of that is that everything just looks super artificial
Yep.
without having, like, a directional light source. But that's a whole different argument. But I think the cinematography, and I will say also, I think more in the beginning of the movie than later in the movie, I feel like this movie is more desaturated than the future Ant-Man movies. Like, even Ant-Man and the Wasp is like much more colorful and bright than I think this movie is. And I feel like this suffers from like the Age of Ultron sort of like desaturated look that they were going for. That was interesting. But I didn't dislike the cinematography. I really actually did like the cinematography in this movie. But yeah, I did want to touch on that. And then I know we already touched on this with like the Stan Lee cameo, but I think that whole Luis sequence at the end
Yeah.
is really, really good
Yep.
and a great way to end the movie for sure. So yeah, I think those two bits for sure stood out to me.
I have two more things. The first
Sure.
one's a little shorter, but I didn't know up until when I was doing my research for trivia that the Yellow Jacket suit was all motion capture CGI.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
yeah, like I knew, obviously they can't shrink. But like I knew with the Ant-Man suit, like we mentioned, like it was an actual suit.
Yeah,
So I always just assumed the Yellow Jacket suit was they had a physical suit, obviously maybe not with like the tendrils coming from the back, but
right.
it Corey Stoll was in all mocap and it was all CGI. And I think the suit looked pretty, realistic compared to like the Ant-Man suit. I thought they were pretty on
Yeah,
par with each other. Like I couldn't tell it was
yeah. I don't know. It
CGI.
did. Yeah, I didn't even know that. That's actually really cool. That's interesting. And I guess it speaks to like what they did with like the suits in Endgame, for example,
Hmm.
those sort of quantum suits,
Hmm.
because those were also only just like sort of CG dots that they had on their, I guess, normal costumes, and then they made those sort of white time traveling suits for them. So I didn't know that they did this in this movie. That's actually a pretty nice
Yeah.
little nugget there.
Yeah, it really just shows you, if Marvel actually spent the time to develop the good CGI, they actually can do it. Um,
Yeah, I think more than developed it's CG. I think it's just giving their
give them
animators
the time.
time. Yeah, because I don't think there's. I mean, bad CGI is never on the artists. It's just that they don't have the time to
Hmm.
do it well, and it's also and honestly poor planning
Yes.
on the part of the studio or whoever is responsible for it. It's not it's not on the animators whatsoever, because I mean, we know that when, like in this movie, when they're given the proper time and resources, they can really cook. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And I'd say my final part that really stuck out to me was the quantum realm sequence where
Mhm.
Scott goes subatomic.
Yeah.
Not only do we get like a tease of the wasp or where we like kind of briefly see her silhouette, but this sequence really sets up a lot of different things. Obviously, it sets up the fact that you can escape the quantum realm, which has implications on further Marvel movies. But I think visually, this is really stunning. It's the first time where we get something so kaleidoscopy and just colorful and weird that we
Yeah.
haven't seen before in the MCU, and it sets up what we're going to see in the next phase, a few movies later in Doctor Strange. So
Yeah.
I really like
Definitely.
this sequence, and I really thought it was visually stunning.
Yeah, no, it really does look good. I think that this is, like you said, the first movie where they start really going like almost metaphysical, and it really does sort of lead us into Doctor Strange for sure, talking about the quantum realm. And I remember I remember a key point of discussion between the two of us when this movie came out was the whole thing when Scott was coming out of the quantum realm, like when he
Hmm.
uses whatever the thing and like messes with the regulator to come back out, that there is like a little flash of the wasp that you see. And I remember that you saw it when you saw it in theaters, and I'm like, oh man, I never saw it. And I had to go back and rewatch. I think we rewatched the movie together in
I think we
theaters.
did. Yeah, I think we
Yeah.
did.
And you pointed it out to me when she actually pops up. So yeah, nice little nod there. And I think again, I think the reaction that Hank has when he realizes that Scott came out of the quantum realm is again great characterization, because you can see his surprise and that sort of glimmer of hope in his eyes that he can actually potentially find Janet again. And I mean, that ends up being the plot basically of the second movie, that he's finding Janet. So
Hmm.
yeah, definitely a good shout there. I think that's really it for my end for Act Three. I mean, obviously at the end, like end of the movie, we get a little wasp tease as a post credit scene, and then the post credit scene is
Yeah,
literally
the
a scene
scene.
basically from Cap Three from Civil War.
Yeah.
So directly setting us up for the follow up movie. So I mean, both little great tags. I think the wasp tease, everyone expected that we were going to see the wasp in the next movie. So yeah, I think that's it, Chris. I think we've run this movie to ground. Or is there anything else you want to cover?
No, I think we can get to scoring. How about you take a first crack at it? I know.
Yeah. I agree with your sentiment from the beginning of the pod that I really like this movie. This movie is always ranked, I think, fairly highly in my overall MCU scoring or ranking or whatever. And I think there is such a charm to it that still holds. And I think one thing that we didn't talk about that lends to that also is the relationship between Scott and Cassie. Really great, played by Abby Ryder Forster. She's such a great, like, she plays a really good character and like really, really sweet and charming. And anyway, has a lot of heart, this movie. I really like it. I'm giving it a 4 out of 5 straight.
Wow. That's a good score.
Yeah.
I am going to go slightly lower. I'm going to go 3.75.
I think that's fair. I have a soft spot for this movie, but I think that's also very fair.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's got a really, really great charm, great character development, fun little ant-sized movie that's self-contained, but has, connective tissue, like you were saying, to the greater MCU. So I think, and like we said, it's definitely the best Ant-Man movie out of the trilogy. So 3.75 for me.
No question this was the best Ant-Man movie. But yeah, I think 3.75 is a very fair score. Yeah, I guess any final thoughts here, Chris, before we, do the rundown, the wrap-up here?
No, I think we're good to just kind of give our little housekeeping items.
Yeah. Well, that has been Ant-Man 1. So,
and Phase 2.
And the end of Phase 2, yeah. That is now the end of Phase 2. We're moving into Phase 3, which seems hard to believe because now Phase 3 is where we really, really get to the good stuff, I would say.
Peak Marvel.
Really, it is peak Marvel. I'm particularly looking at the next one, Civil War. I think that should be a particularly interesting one because I know we have some interesting differing opinions on Civil War. Not in terms of the quality of the movie, but in terms of our opinions on the characters' positions in this movie. Yep. Yes. But yeah. All right. But that has been our episode on Ant-Man. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you liked what you heard, please, we would appreciate if you liked, rated, and commented on our podcast. Wherever you listen to your podcasts, we are available. So Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music. Yeah, wherever you listen to your podcast, we are available. If you would like to write into us, would now say our new Stanley tier ranking, or with any questions or further thoughts, if you want to continue the conversation, you can reach out to our email address at ostrichtechnique@gmail.com. And yeah, I think that's it, Chris. But yeah, if there's really nothing else, I've been Aaaaand.
And I've been Chris.
And we will see you guys for Phase 3 and Civil War. Bye.
See you then.